Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our Creative Mastermind webinar. We're going to give it about 30 seconds or so for everyone to join, and then we'll get started after that. So hello and welcome to our Color Edge Creative Mastermind webinar. My name is Kevin Burke. I'm a business development manager here at EIZO, and I'll be your host today. We're hosting an ongoing series of these webinars featuring EIZO Color Edge power users who are also recognized leaders in their profession, including photography, print, filmmakers, animation, visual effects, and post-production. The Creative Mastermind series is brought to you by EIZO, the makers of the Academy Award-winning Color Edge self-calibrating, color-accurate monitors preferred by the most discerning creative people everywhere. Today, we're pleased to have two visual effects professionals join us for an educational deep dive on some of the VFX techniques they used while working together on the Terminator Dark Fate feature. That's Eric Barba and Jake Maymudes.
Hello there.
Hello. So we're going to go ahead and read your bios, and then we'll move on. Eric is a visual effects supervisor for television, film, and commercial advertising. After studying at the Art Center College of Design, Eric began his career at Steven Spielberg's Amblin Imaging as a digital artist on Sequest 2032 and Sliders. In 1996, he joined Digital Domain as a digital artist on The Fifth Element before working his way to CG supervisor on Supernova, and finally to visual effects supervisor for David Fincher's Zodiac. Barba earned a reputation for high-end visual graphics, working closely with directors like Fincher and Joseph Kosinski on both film and advertising projects, as well as directing commercials himself for Nike, American Express, and Honda. Eric won the 81st Academy Awards for the film The Curious Case of Benjamin Button in the category of Best Visual Effects. He shared his Oscar with Craig Barron, Burt Dalton, and Steve Preek. In 2013, Eric was promoted to Chief Creative Officer and Senior Visual Effects Supervisor at Digital Domain 3.0, which was the latest iteration of Digital Domain Visual Effects Studio at that time. Barba continued to oversee the company's Los Angeles studio until leaving Digital Domain to operate as a freelance visual effects supervisor in 2015. And he's done lots of work since then. Eric will be discussing the benefits of blue screen extraction and digital background creation when we get to that section. Jacob Maymudes, founder of Wylie VFX, which is formerly called Rebellion, is a career visual effects artist and supervisor. Having started his professional career at Industrial Light and Magic in 2002, he migrated from the Bay Area to Los Angeles in 2005. Since moving to Los Angeles, he has also worked at Sony ImageWorks and Digital Domain on films like Spider-Man, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Tron Legacy, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and X-Men First Class, to name a few. Jacob excelled and supervised the creation of hundreds of high-profile commercial projects at The Mill in Los Angeles as a visual effects supervisor as well. When Jacob departed The Mill in 2015, his intentions were to focus on feature film and television visual effects. He was offered the role of client-side VFX supervisor on Airplane Mode, and Wylie VFX took on the 500 VFX shots needed for the film. Since 2015, Wylie VFX has created visual effects for some of the largest films in Hollywood, including Terminator Dark Fate, Beastie Boys story Dune, and the Stand TV series to make up some of their recent credit list. In 2021, Jacob became a brand ambassador for EIZO's Color Edge line of post-production monitors. So welcome, Jake. Jake is going to break down some of the techniques behind the VFX work done on Terminator Dark Fate as well. So welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and thank you to everybody in the audience for joining. And one other thing I'd like to mention is we will have a question answer session toward the end. So if you could go ahead and put your questions up on the chat, I'll be sure to answer everyone that we've got time for. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Sure.
It's great to be here. Eric, I didn't know that you did Fifth Element. It's one of my all-time favorite films. All time.
That was the first film I got to work on when I first got to Digital Domain, and it was so much fun. That was a really great project to start off with.
That's incredible. What was your role in that film?
I was a digital artist on the film. My background, coming out of Art Center, I was a car designer major there, and so when I got on Fifth Element, Mark Stetson, who was the visual effects supervisor, he had gone to Art Center, and we kind of hit it off. And I would get these designs of vehicles for the flying around the New York City sequence, and I would just build them in. At that point, I was using Alias or Lightwave. I'm not even really sure anymore. And then I'd render them out, and he just loved what I was doing. So I got put to help get all the CG car stuff looking like real cars.
It's incredible. That film still holds up today. It's been decades, and it's still an incredible film, and the visual effects still hold up. It's like
amazing.
It's a fun film to watch for sure.
Yeah, and it's become a celebrated cult classic too. Like even every year you see people dressed up as the girl for Halloween. It's just like it's a fantastic film. Anyway, I have a breakdown reel for Terminator that I'm about to show, and after we watch the reel, we can discuss it and do a deeper dive into some of the aspects of it. Eric was the overall visual effects supervisor, and I was the in-house team visual effects supervisor for Eric. My team contributed about 900 or so finals to the film. Mostly the smaller shots in overall in the overall aspect of visual effects, but still interesting stuff that we can dig in and talk about.
Important stuff.
Important stuff, yeah. The meat and potatoes work is what we like to call it.
Yeah.
But the breakdown reel is great. So Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is mostly the Oscars breakdown reel. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is one of the reels that we presented to show off the work that all the teams that worked on the film had done.
Let's take a look.
We've lost color. Fun stuff.
There we go. Terminator was one of the larger visual effects films the year it came out. It was shortlisted for an Oscar, isn't that right? Eric was on the shortlist, right?
We made the Bake Off, which is always a nod to everyone's incredible hard work that was put into it. So we're pretty happy about that.
It was a beast. Thousands of visual effects shots, hundreds and hundreds of visual effects artists working on it. More than 10 visual effects vendors from around the world.
13.
13 visual effects vendors from around the world, all of which the largest companies that do visual effects in the world. So, I mean, you had Scanline, Digital Domain, Weta, ILM. I mean, it was the who's who of visual effects. I don't think DNEG was on there, right? Maybe we missed one company.
Yeah, I think we missed a couple, but yeah, it was also availability, and the shot count grew, but we had some great teams certainly to get it done in the time that we had.
It's just a behemoth of a film. Kevin, you don't mind if I just ask Eric some questions real quick?
Please do.
I'm such a fanboy of visual effects, and Eric, despite being one of my good friends, I'm still a fan of his, just professionally. Eric, how long were you on Terminator?
Probably 2 years. Had to think about it for a sec, because our I think when I came on it, we actually got a full green light. Yeah, almost 2 years.
And you were at ILM when you started the project, right?
Yeah. I was when the project started, I moved back to Los Angeles so that I could help in prep. I was up in Vancouver as the creative director, helping that studio grow and build and recruit. But this project was far too big not to be attached to it 100% of the time. So I moved back to Los Angeles, and we went straight into pre-production and planning, and then off to Budapest and Spain to shoot.
Pre-production, you had Previs, which Third Floor was one of the vendors. That's right, for Previs? And did you have other vendors for Previs? I think there's 3 or so, or even Blur. Blur provided some.
We had three people, or 3 companies helping us out. At the end of the day, Third Floor ended up coming in-house in post to help us with fleshing out stuff we hadn't quite got, and getting the director all the little changes and nuances he wanted to work with the edit. And they were great in-house.
And that's where we came in at the tail end of Previs. We came in for Postviz, and my company provided an additional 800 or so Postviz shots on the film, which was also no small feat in addition to our finals. Eric, so
we should quickly mention that the thing about Postviz is Postviz is one of those things that is so crucial for a big visual effects film to get an edit and get a handle around it and get the director making sure that all those beats are hit. But it's something that unfortunately up front, when you're bidding out a film, is the first thing people say, we don't need post-viz, and they try to scrape it off because it may be $1 million or so more than the studio has. And they all always kind of say, we won't need as much, but in this case, because of trying to make all these amazing sequences work, we did do a hell of a lot of post-viz, and Jake's team was a huge part of that as well.
What happens during post-viz?
Post-viz, in some cases, here we're staring at the pickup truck going down the road, and if you saw the live plate with cables and crew and missing pieces here and there, in order for the audience to get what's going on, a lot of it has to be cleaned up quickly and some stuff blocked out, and there may be intercut shots with full CG shots to add excitement or action beats that weren't shot during principal production. It's the meat to try to tell the story so that you can put it in front of an audience and get a reaction. Not finished work, because post-viz is done very quickly and sometimes crudely. It's just to make sure that the story is working and the edit's working, and that you can show it. Before we turn over the shots, to our visual effects partners. And once they get it, then they have a guide from the post-viz to make their shots. And then the goal is to make it fully photoreal.
When an edit's being formed, there's a lot of blue screen and missing animation. So, putting those things in really helps tell the story and craft the story. So, there's entire there's companies that just specifically do that kind of work. My company's a hybrid where we do previs, post-viz, and we also do finishing work. But it's a crucial part of the story and the process is to sort of fill in these gaps during the editing phase to figure out the best possible way to tell the story.
If Jake, if you slid over to maybe one of the full blue screen shots to kind of help everyone imagine if you had an edit just full of people on blue screen, and in this case with these funny hats on, it bumps everybody and it's just hard to look at. So even Jake, you said it much more succinctly than I did, but the intent is to, if you're going to show an audience, you got to get the blue screen out of there at minimum and just make it so that people believe that they're in a real factory.
And as the director and the editors are exploring the edit, the post-viz, the way post-viz is done is that it dives into the shots, it dives into the footage, and it exposes what's necessary to complete the story and to make changes to various types of shots. For instance, what's on screen right now, this, I believe, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but this wasn't supposed to be, or shots like this weren't necessarily supposed to be in the film. Wasn't this originally like a fight reference, and then the actual actors were gonna, like, this wasn't necessarily a head replacement shot, and then it became like the fight reference was perfect, and it was like, all right, let's use this and replace the heads instead. Or am I wrong about this particular shot?
No, so a lot of the times, in planning, we knew we were going to have to do extensions for the factory because we couldn't shoot inside the actual Mercedes factory. But our actual principal actors did a lot of these sequences. It's like a big dance and rehearsal, and they did a fantastic job. But then we'd also shoot them with the second unit team using just the stunt performers for things that maybe weren't right, or maybe we could get a better version. And to Jake's point, in some cases in the edit, we ended up using the stunt performers instead of our principal actors, which necessitated head replacements, as we call them, which is why these two stunt performers have the funny hats on. That allowed us to then remove their heads and put the actual actors' heads on their bodies.
Now, like digital humans and head replacements, it's kind of the holy grail of visual effects. In this film, you were planning on doing a lot of head replacements. Didn't that work expand? Like, wasn't there like 3x the amount of head replacement shots that you originally planned to do? Or it was a huge number, right?
It did grow, and it grew probably more than we initially planned. But with these big stunt sequences and the way that Tim wanted to make them, so the audience just went, wow, and I think he succeeded. It necessitated more than we originally planned for.
I think we're like, here it's back to back, right? So that this is a 2 head replacement shot going right into more head replacement shots, and you can see the process here. Adding in the background, removing the practical heads, removing
and
the
arms.
CG arms, yep, that become CG assets, and then later on the finished work.
Then it has to intercut with the live actors in a lot of cases, and then back and forth. So it's tricky work for sure.
Yep. This is Budapest, right? So this is the pickup truck sequence in the film. Another huge sequence for visual effects. You shoot this in Mexico? Or no, you shot this in.
This is Spain.
Budapest. Spain. There you go.
Yeah, this is actually Spain. Incredibly hot days. Good ice cream. It was fun.
In this particular shot, you have a CG vehicle, you have CG debris, you have CG dust, and then the plate itself has been cut apart and retimed to get a more exciting lineup.
And CG heroes in the pickup truck. The pickup truck was actually shot without, well, actually, in this particular take we used, I think it was shot without. We had, because the vehicles are being pulled on cables, there were safety concerns about putting actual, for timing purposes, actual stunt performers inside them. So in cases like this, we ended up having to add CG actors to the vehicles afterward.
Here's one of the larger tentpole shots of the entire film. This was the Rev-9 liquefying and pulling himself out onto the hood of the truck in preparation to jump and try and grab Grace. Let me play it. Oh.
This probably added a few years to Alex Wang's, or took off a few years from his lifespan, because him and his team at ILM worked so hard to get everything just right. They did a great job.
It's fantastic. You don't really get a sense of the versions that this took from the breakdown that I have here, but I mean, this was 8 months in development. I mean, maybe a year and a half in development, but you know, a solid, what do you think, 8 months of just like working on it nonstop?
Probably easily, because of the R&D initially, and then these shots were featured in the first trailer. So there was a trailer versions, and then with trailers, you don't get a lot of time. You know, the editors hand you a version, and you go, holy shit, those shots aren't even on our schedule for another 3 months, and well, we need them in 4 weeks for the trailer. And then all of a sudden the teams are reprioritized to get things done. So sometimes you'll put shots out in a trailer that ultimately you end up redoing for the film. They're really great for learning. They're really great for getting the teams to get up to speed on what the director's really thinking. But then you go back and finesse everything for the feature film.
This is the shot that we did the post-viz for, and it was complicated in post-viz and complicated to do for the film. Let's scroll ahead here. Here's another tentpole shot for the film. This is another similar complicated sim. This took hundreds and hundreds of versions.
Yep. Our director would see it and love where it was going, but keep pushing the team to go further still. It's one of those things with fluid sims that, you know, you can run a fluid sim and you get one version of it, but trying to make a fluid sim give you the exact same thing every single time is tricky, and then being able to art direct it as well is even trickier. So yeah, this one, these aren't shots that typically studios maybe make money on, but they certainly look great on the reel.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, from the Terminator franchise point of view, there had to be an evolution to this stuff. So it couldn't remotely look like any of the other Terminator films. It had to be so much cooler and more thought after and thought about. You know, just every aspect of it had to just be perfect.
Well, the goal certainly was to, you know, if in T2 the liquid metal Terminator, not only was it iconic, but it, you know, it marked a milestone in visual effects timeline. Our director wanted this to be even more intelligent and have different layers to it, because this is a much more advanced version of what the T2 Terminator represented. So yeah, a lot of effort was put into it.
Throughout the film, there are several spots where there are entirely CG shots, right? That are photorealistic and completely convincing. I believe this is one of them, right? I think the van is real, but everything else has been manipulated and created. And this is digital domain, right?
Yeah, I think even the van was replaced. In some cases, what happened is we shot this in Budapest, and the sequence in Budapest, and the location that we were shooting at didn't really have all the little pieces that we needed for something like this, and you could never fly a helicopter, in this manner for a shot, just for safety reasons. And we did have a giant helicopter on a crane to help us with some things, but the reality is this is where post-viz comes in. Once the edit started coming together and the action beats happened, we ended up throwing away, or just, I shouldn't even say throwing away, not using the live action that was shot because it wasn't helping tell the story the way that our director envisioned it. So we went to these fully CG shots to get what he was after.
Next up is it's a C14 Chase. This is a C5. This is a C5 crashing into a C5. Fully.
Well, that was a 110. I'm already forgetting. But yes, big planes hitting each other in the sky.
Hitting each other.
Yeah.
A very complicated story beat that needed tons and tons of previs and postviz. Third Floor really took the lead on doing the postviz for this sequence, building out a god cam to figure out the gravity of the whole sequence. The gravity's changing constantly. The planes are diving and then pulling up and diving, pulling up, diving, and then trying to figure that out as the film's being edited. So as the sequence is changing, constantly going back to post-viz to figure out how the gravity is changing. Like if you lose, 5 or 6 shots from a certain section, how do you make sense of the continuity, looking out the window and whatnot, or being able to see what direction the plane is headed. Eric, what were some of the more complicated aspects of this sequence for you to figure out as you were working on it?
Well, initially, the hardest thing to solve was how do we light 2 dark planes at night flying in the sky and not make it too theatrical. When we typically shoot live action at night, you have these giant lights off camera, just so you can photograph it, and it's a look, and it's theatrical. If you know what you're looking for, it kind of pokes at you, trying to make things look realistic. Any imagery we could find of real planes at night, it's pretty much dark and you can't see anything going on. So just from an artistic standpoint, is what can we cheat, what can we get in there to help the audience see what's going on, but not make it too theatrical, and not hopefully take the audience out of the moment as too unbelievable. But Tim's really great at delivering these big action sequences, and again, I think he did here without bumping the audience. It's an unbelievable sequence, and it leaves you on the edge of your seat. So I think it worked.
Yeah, Tim did a phenomenal job with this.
But that scene started with somebody actually getting up and going out in the sky at night and shooting that airplane at every angle they could. No. Okay.
No, just actually the U.S. Air Force wouldn't even let us get near a real C5 to photograph.
Okay.
We went around for months because I was like, guys, I need access. If we're going to make this thing, I need to make it look as real as we can. And they just, even going to a museum, they wouldn't allow us to do it. So there's enough really great footage online, both in 2D and photographs and video, that the team at ILM was able to build a pretty great model. And they tested against shots in photographs, so they knew that the model would kind of hold up. Where we cheat again is these sequences where we don't have real light, where you have to kind of fake a little bit just so the audience can see what's going on. So these are fully initially pre-vised out and then post-vised out as fully CG shots, just because of the practical nature, you can't really ever shoot it.
Yeah, okay.
There was a plethora of aerial photography shot though, as for both reference and for use as background plates. I think ultimately the entire background is CG, but Eric, you guys shot a ton of footage, on airfields, in the air, at night, during the day.
Yeah, that was for when they were leaving, getting to the airbase and then leaving. We had, of course, helicopters that got us great footage, and there's a lot of it is in the film. But then you use that as reference to match for everybody to what the CG shots need to look like, or the fully generated shots need to look like. Where's our CG Arnold?
Arnold was done exceptionally in this film. Even the beginning shot, opening sequence, Arnold here, just a phenomenal rendering of Arnold. This was done by multiple vendors, right? It wasn't just ILM who did Arnold at this level.
ILM was responsible for building the asset, and certainly this is one of their renders. They probably got it to the highest level because that was the job to get the development going. But then that asset was handed off to Method and to Digital Domain and Scanline for the shots that they had that required a CG Arnold.
It's incredible work.
This is Arnold, a case of the Digital Domain shots that receive those assets. So these assets all came from ILM, and then DD put them into their pipeline and did their thing.
Were you there when Arnold came in and looked around?
Yeah.
He was so nice. He's
hysterical,
really fantastic guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he mention to you what he thought of his digital self at any point?
I think we even showed him on set, but he just kind of smirked a little bit at the time. He didn't I mean, give us a big reaction.
He's been through it so many times. It must be an old hat for him. He's like, yeah, I have 800 different versions of me digital. He's like, whatever.
He's pretty funny. He'll drop little one-liners, everything. He's a pleasure to work with. Smart guy, and he was great.
One of the fun aspects of being the in-house team is sitting there with the visual effects supervisor and the director and the editing team. But because of that proximity to where everything's being done, people like Arnold Schwarzenegger just walk through your office and like say hi, shake everyone's hands. Even I think just randomly Jim Carrey came by the office, to talk to Tim, about I think it was Sonic that he was talking to him about. But we all get to meet Jim Carrey. It's just the perks of being in the office with everyone is fantastic.
Yeah.
In addition to the food. More full CG shots. Massive sequence, also full CG. Very complicated shots. These shots took months and months and months to figure out and to dial in. This is
I love Scanline's great work here.
Yeah, Scanline, they did a phenomenal job on this stuff. Bouncing around, I think, is this also Scanline or is this another? Did we switch here?
Yeah, no. Once they hit the water, it switches back to ILM.
That's right. And then here's this is Blur's sequence. Blur did a phenomenal job on this. They picked one of the smaller sequences in the film, and it is one of the harder sequences to do, and did a phenomenal job. So this is Tim Miller's, the director's company, Blur, who provided the visual effects for this. And I believe they did all their own post-viz and pre-viz for this, right?
Yep.
I don't think us or Third Floor did any post-viz for this.
They've got a great little team there.
mean, just a crazy amount of work. Dan Akers was the supervisor for this at Blur, and I remember him just not sleeping for a couple months. And he's,
Can you talk about when artists are working on a scene like this, you've got dozens maybe working on the same scene?
Hundreds, yeah. Yeah,
Hundreds?
I mean, dozens for a shot like this that has a huge effects element to it, dozens, absolutely.
What does each person do? What does one artist do on a scene like this?
There'll be one guy who just does the effects fire, just the fire. There'll be one guy who just does the effects smoke. And you know, maybe that person doubles up and does the dust, but there could be an entirely other person who just does the dust. And that's how compartmentalized it is. And every aspect of it is compartmentalized. So you have another person who just does the animation. You have another person that just does the rigging of the 3D characters, a modeler, a texturer. And then, you know, you get down the line, you have a compositor and a digital painter and a rotoscope artist. You know, for films of this magnitude, shots that are this big, everything is compartmentalized. On smaller shots, you might have, you know, just 2 or 3 guys who do a smaller shot. But that even has, you know, 3D animation and compositing and all those other aspects. But on, you know, tent-pole shots, it really gets fine-tuned. It takes a lot of collaboration. And then, I mean, in addition to that, it requires its own production pipeline. So just like you have a producer and PAs and coordinators on set to help you facilitate all of the crazy things that need to happen on set and the organizational aspect of it, in post-production, in visual effects, you have to have the same amount of support because you're spending basically the same amount of money. You have, you know, in some cases, the same amount of people, manpower working on it, even more in some cases. So, you know, just because you have the right artist talent working on a shot, it still wouldn't function. You still couldn't do it if you didn't have the right production support supporting those artists. So let's say you have 20 people working on the shot that I have on the screen right now. You still have to have coordinators and producers and people figuring out how to talk to each other and communicate notes effectively, and a way to track all these changes and a way to, like, you know, save the data. You need your engineering support. It's a beast. You know, the whole thing is just like, I mean, financially, it's just like costs an insane amount of money just like to do one shot. It's just like a fortune.
I'm gonna steal one of our viewers' questions because I'm curious about it too, and I want to ask it now rather than wait. But Eric, you're working with at least 13 different companies that are just doing visual effects for the production of this, regardless of pre-viz and post-viz. So you're putting together 13 different companies' work, correct?
Yep.
What color space did everybody work in?
Well, the goal was to deliver everything in ACES to the DI house. ACES allows everyone to I think do things a little easier. It's Rec 709, but delivered as far as on the desktop. Editorials all Rec 709, P3 in DI, but ideally everything goes into ACES so that when we're in the DI, we can get it all looking great. And I do think that's where having me seeing 13 different studios work on a properly calibrated monitor that I can make sure a blue is a blue or a cyan is matching to different shots and sequences is crucial, which is why we chose EIZO. Honestly, it's because I could come to work every day and rely that monitor is calibrated. The self-calibration feature is fantastic. It doesn't waver. I've had past professional monitors that I'd have to call my engineer all the time and say, look, I know that's wrong. It's just magenta today. And he'd come in and, oh, sure enough, it was magenta, or that's looking at too cyan. I don't have that problem with the EIZO because all that work does have to go together.
Eric, I'm going to chime in. So I've gotten this wrong for the last, I don't know how many years, 10 years, ever since I've known about the EIZO brand, but it's EIZO apparently. And I've called it EIZO. I've called it EIZO for 15 years. And Matthew the other day was like, Jake, you even said, I said it in the video, like the breakdown that we did with Tim, and you and I both say it.
Well, I don't really speak English anyway, so coming from me, people would expect Eric's garbled talk. So I think
Yeah.
I can get away with it. But you, Jake,
Yeah, well, yeah, I was blowing it. But yeah, EIZO. It's apparently EIZO, everyone. That's how you say it correctly. EIZO.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah. I mean, in the visual, I mean, I've never actually heard it referred to as EIZO by anybody in sort of visual effects, you know, amongst my peers. So when Matthew called me out, I was like, well, I mean, wait a second. I mean, like, this is like, we need like a larger set of instructions here for everybody in my industry. Like, there needs to be like a commercial or something that says, hey guys, like, you know, industry wide, you guys are saying the wrong word.
So when I call people that don't know me, you know, as a business development rep for EIZO, I say it's, you know, maybe on the phone, it's Kevin with EIZO. They're like, Kevin, EIZO, what is EIZO? EIZO.
Yeah.
Oh, EIZO. Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. That's good. That's good. That's your moment to inform people. Be like, yeah, you know.
That's what happens right after that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's keep going through. This is on screen now. This is the Rev-9 getting up. Tim was very particular about how he wanted the Rev-9 to move, how he wanted the Rev-9 to sort of just lift off the ground. This is one that we explored a lot of different ways of getting up in post-viz. He wanted something unique, something new, and you know, to take advantage of the fact that it's you know, it could articulate its limbs in any possible direction. So what's the most efficient way for a robot to get up? Because obviously it wouldn't just stand up like a normal human or biped. It would do whatever was most efficient. You know, I think we went around a few times to sort of figure out the efficiency of the Rev-9 standing up in this spot. This is part of the end sequence in the factory. Just another huge sequence of work. So Eric, I mean, I think this is fully CG, but you did shoot. I could probably pull it up. I think I have some of this stuff on archived. But was this on? This was on a stage, right? Or was this in an actual factory?
No, this was on a stage that we built 3 of those kind of turbines, like kind of 2.5 on a stage in Budapest. And obviously ILM in this case did the extensions and the explosion work on this sequence.
So this is cutting back and forth, but this is a full CG replication of it. And then we cut to some shots on the set where you know, there's a significant amount of blue screen replacement here.
Yep.
Here's a full CG version of it again. And then this last, so it's full CG in the beginning and then it flies over here, and this is practical for the most part on the left side.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of full CG too, because of the stunts, trying to get the stunts right.
One of my favorite shots of the Rev-9. This was the cover of CineFX right here.
Yeah.
Some of ILM's work. This is one of our artists. This is our beautification artist. We're seeing the back of his head, but we had a single artist whose only focus was probably stuff we can't talk about. Now that I think about it.
Yes, we should probably move on.
So we're gonna go. So you can see in the background, you can see there's a Terminator 2 gun above his head. This was put in before we started post-production, before we moved into the office. This was like right above our desks. So the entire time, the year that we were on the show, we always felt like we were under the gun.
Literally.
Under the gun. This is our comp supervisor, James Lee, working on a couple of EIZOs. He's a phenomenally talented keyer. He kind of specializes in sort of cutting edge keying technology. He's relentless in his pursuit of perfection for the perfect key. In fact, Eric, maybe this is a good time to jump into that. So you actually have a very strong preference over blue screen and green screen. And not only that, we could also touch on why we didn't use any virtual sets, or why you didn't use any virtual sets for a lot of the blue screen work. So why did you choose blue screen?
My decision to use blue screen versus green screen really goes back to a test, or a shot, I should say, that was done on a commercial that I was doing for David Fincher. Now, in previous to shooting digitally, because of the nature of film, the green channel is generally the cleanest, and the blue channel is generally the noisiest, or the most grain in it, which makes keying on it when you're doing film a lot trickier than, say, doing green, especially in those days when the keyers weren't quite as good. So I want to say it was 2004, this is prepping to do Zodiac in the Curious Case of Benjamin Button. David wanted to do, he wanted to shoot the film digitally, and we were using the Thompson Viper in these commercials that I was doing with them, and kind of just getting experience with it, and getting experience with me, and kind of bringing me and my team along with him. And what Jeff Cronenwith lit one of the sets we were doing. It was for a Lexus spot, and he used blue screen because we had it available at the time. And up to that point, especially with the Thompson Viper, the green channel it just had all the data, and it was beautiful data. And the other two channels were a bit dirtier. But we got that footage back to start keying, and we'd never seen cleaner keys. They were unbelievable with the way that Jeff had not only lit it, but the fact that it was behind. We didn't expect to get that clean from that camera versus green. Now, the other reason I really love blue versus green is just an artist thing with people's skin. When we shoot people, our base color is essentially red. And when we use green screen, any bounce, even slight reflection from the oil in your skin, that green and your base red mix. When it's bouncing, it mixes, it subdues your natural color. And it's not there in the footage because it's mixing with you. So to me, the skin tones are much harder to get more natural on a big green screen shoot than it is on a blue screen shoot, because the blue is a natural color. We're all outside every day in the environment. It doesn't have the same effect on our skin tones. It's also much more pleasing to look at every day on set. Claudio Miranda, at one point we were shooting something, he's all, this is just better on my eyes every day. In fact, I was shooting Tron Legacy. And so between the better skin tone color, it's more pleasing on the eye, and the advance of the digital cameras certainly now, and the keyers, blue I think is just a much better selection for me when we're doing people, because I feel like we get a much more natural look. Some people love green because it's easier to key. I've never wanted to do the easiest work. I wanted to do the best work. And so for me, pushing to do things on blue, even though it might take a teeny bit longer, I think it's always been worth it in the end result.
I've seen just, in the last however many years, people have been shooting on screens like that. I mean, green screen seems to have become the standard, at least in broadcast TV, which is where, the layperson like me would normally see that being used, like on a weather report or something like that. Is the standardization on green, or how it became that way? Was it because somebody had to go one way and they chose that way, or was it because there was more supply of green than blue? I mean, what would make the industry have gone one way when there is kind of a better way to do it?
It was
Well,
really digital. Go for it, Eric.
I was going to say, I do think that everything has gotten better with the digital cameras. When we had film and we were shooting it, it didn't make more sense because it was a cleaner key. But even we shot a lot of films with both blue and green, and I have used green about 4 or 5 years ago, 5 years ago now, on a project where we were shooting with the new Arri Alexa. And when we looked at the different channels, we saw that giving that footage to a younger freelance composite team wasn't going to give us the result we wanted. So we purposely chose green because of the response the Alexa was giving us. I think now, especially with the LF, which is what this film was shot on, the new Sony Venice, even the F65 before, these cameras are so great that there almost isn't a reason to use green. I'm sure there are people that would argue with me and tell me why it's better, but I'm coming from an artistic point of view of color. I just think skin tone looks much more natural when all is said and done when you shoot with blue. And the darker your skin, the more that becomes important, I believe, because the oil on your skin will pick up reflectance, and that green, it doesn't mix well with our natural colors. Sorry, Jake, you should probably put your point in.
That was my point exactly. You know, at this point, camera technology, it doesn't even matter. Now it's a creative choice, and you know, skin tone and ease of use, and you know, costume design, like these things all now play a factor. And if you use blue screen or green screen, it doesn't really have anything to do with grain profile or compression ratios or anything like that. You have fantastic cameras, you could shoot uncompressed. You know, it's literally a creative choice at this point, you know. And as like Eric said, just skin tone alone is a worthy enough reason to sort of steer your direction into blue screen. But it doesn't really matter. You know, it's like you can make it work with green screen. You know, if you had the choice and really there was no issue with costumes or production design, then you just go blue. You know, easier.
And I think, Kevin, to your point, when we do see, you know, I think your local news is probably the easiest example for everybody, and that they're keying out your weather girl, and you're dropping in the background. They do use green because the systems are just set up that way. They could easily be set up for blue as well, but I think you'll find that you get a lot of that green spill around them, and it's very obvious what they are. It's not as clean, and they don't want to do a secondary pass and try to clean any of that stuff up. So the system's just set up for green to begin with. But you know, hopefully that'll change in the future, and it'll just be depth, and you won't even need a process screen. It'll just all be cued on depth.
I'm also curious when you would use a green or a blue screen versus when you would take that next step and use a digital, you know, like an LED background versus, you know, doing something in front of just a blue or green screen.
The LED background walls, or what now is in vogue, is called virtual production, although we've been kind of in virtual production for the last 30 years. It is another way of getting something in camera that looks, I mean, obviously it's as you shot it. The problem, and it's not a big problem, is you have to, it's just like when you build a set. You build a set, it's there, you shoot it, it's done. With virtual production, you have to build that set. It's the same kind of tool set, only you're doing it digitally in the computer. You have to finish the set, it's got to be painted, everything's got to be exactly the way you want it. So when you shoot, it's in camera. That means the director and everybody have to be on board with the planning that goes into doing that ahead of time, because there isn't, it's incredibly cost prohibitive to then go, you know what, we shot it, but I want to change it all, because now you're doing it a second time. So for projects that can pre-plan and sign off on everything, and the DP and the director are on board, and the shooting style works for it, and they can be fantastic, especially if it's part of the plan. It's really great, but you just have to get everyone on board, and you have to be buttoned up with what you're putting on that panel, because to make any changes is just going to double the cost essentially.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there's no tearing it apart afterwards. When you have a blue screen, you can, extract everything in front of it and change the background a million different times. But virtual production, if you commit, like Eric said, it's more expensive to change it later. But they still do it. You could still roto off your characters and change the background.
You can just
probably really difficult and a big
green
waste of time and money at the beginning, right?
Well, it just depends. It depends on what you're interested in getting. I mean, sometimes they use virtual production to just get lighting and reflection correct in camera, or somewhat correct, and then they'll still have a blue or green box around the key talent, so they'll extract out the foreground and still replace the entire background, but be able to benefit from the digital lighting and environment with their reflections and lighting. Complicated. How about some questions? I think we're 59 minutes. We're an hour in. Let's do some questions.
Sure. So I got George's question already. I started with that, but Daniel asks, in what context were the EIZO monitors utilized? Was it dailies or other? It's hard to imagine 600 plus artists all had EIZOs. Can I start with that first?
Yeah, absolutely.
From the list of companies that you mentioned that you worked with, Eric, on all the VFX, most of them have EIZO monitors throughout. At least half of them do have EIZO monitors within their facilities throughout with all their artists. So I can imagine that there was a lot of work done on EIZO monitors on this movie, regardless of the relationship the two of you had. That's for sure.
When you're doing work at the highest quality, at the highest level, you want the best tech out there. And EIZO, as far as a monitor goes, is the best.
So when the two of you were working together, at what point were the benefits of the EIZO monitor most apparent?
Well, here's a shot of us. This is on the prominence. Your super high end, P3, just the top tier monitor that you offer. Eric and I are having a 4K review on it. This thing was fantastic. We had it in a completely sealable room. You could get this room so dark that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Eric would go in and, just sort of double check color pipeline and brightness and just all aspects of color on the entire show. And this could replicate what we were seeing in the theater and what we were seeing at DI over at Company 3. So, I mean, it was phenomenal. And then our workstation monitors, they couldn't replicate P3 ColorSpace, but, they're perfect for Rec 709, and that was our working ColorSpace on the show. So, we can go between, this room or a workstation on someone's desk and be looking at almost exactly the same thing. Really just a difference in brightness and in bit depth or color depth.
Great.
That is stuff, as far as this hardware goes, it's for us, it's all we use. This is what we use.
And I think I mentioned this before, because I was reviewing before I would go into our theater. I was always at my desk reviewing work as it was coming in. And when you have companies sharing sequences, like the air battle sequence, for example, going inside and out with Digital Domain and ILM, having that split, or even the same split with the fight in the car factory, being able to compare their shots, what's coming in from ILM that cuts directly with the live action shot, that cuts with the Digital Domain shot, making sure the color's sitting right, making sure the skin tones are tracking correctly. Again, for me, having a monitor that's absolutely accurate allows me to give correct notes back to those companies, which hopefully saves us all a little bit of time and money.
Continuity.
Yes. Eric, yeah, that's right. Eric had a 319 on his desk. I use the CG279s. I'm a fan of the 2K monitors. And then we had that prominence, like I said before. I mean, you know, they're all just fantastic pieces of equipment. Any other questions?
Yes. Alejandro asks, in the plane crashing into the water sequence, there are several passes or layers applied to the water. Are those passes for different lights, or what are they?
So some of those are different elements. Some of those are Z-depth elements to simulate the fog and the glow of the fire on the water, particulate matter in the water, all those things that, you know, we need to try to pull off underwater, because it's a super challenge to get water working correctly. Even shooting with real water, it's almost impossible to keep those tanks from getting cloudy. And if you make them too dirty, they don't look great. It's tricky. So all those passes are essentially trying to get us real looking water, but still allow us to see the story point. So we take some artistic license so that the audience can still track with it.
Real water. Amazing.
Real water was the holy grail of visual effects for a period in time. You know, it moved on to digital humans, but you know, for a minute there was companies that specialized. They're like, you go to this company for water. If you want the best looking water, you go to this company.
Yeah, that was the Titanic days.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, you know, the evolution of visual effects has changed, or moved on. But for a minute there, it was a big deal.
Let's see. Gaurav asks, do you have any suggestions for a beginner who's willing to learn 3D work in this industry, in terms of books or place to go to get more into learning how to do this? How do they start?
Well, Blender, I would jump into Blender off the bat because it's free and it just YouTube tutorials. Eric, what are you about to say?
Sorry, go ahead, Jake, then I'll try.
No, that's really all I have. You know, starting from ground zero, you know, like get into a software, a 3D program that's free or inexpensive, and just start poking around and, you know, start there and just find your love for it. There's so many different aspects to 3D work that you may not realize what you actually enjoy doing, from 3D animation to lighting, texturing, rigging. I mean, there really is something for everyone. Eric, what are you about to say?
Well, I've been asked that question a lot over the years, and I usually tell them, it's instead of focusing on the computer skills, because to me it's just another tool, focus on learning to draw, to paint, color theory, pick up a camera, learn the fundamentals, because those are the fundamentals you'll draw on when you're on the computer and you're trying to do stuff. There's a period of time, probably in the late 90s, where when I was at Digital Domain, they were literally hiring anybody that had a pulse to get The Fifth Element, Titanic, and what was the third film we were doing at that time? Just literally, we had one of our security guards that was trained in compositing, and he became a fantastic compositor. But what happens is, if people don't have those fundamental artistic skills, they get to a certain level, and you can see it in their work. You can learn the skills on the computer. The Blender is such a fantastic program these days. Unreal is such a fantastic engine. There's so much great software now, but you need some fundamentals to help you so that your work shines above other people. And that artistry, that is what I think artists need to offer more than anything. There's plenty of people that know how to use the software, but that artistry is super important.
Great, thank you. What was the toughest shot or sequence for either of you to crack in this feature, in Terminator?
We did, it's for us that we don't have any of it in the breakdown reel here, but we did all of the, I mean, we replaced pretty much all of the blue screen shots in the whole film, all of the sort of car interiors and just, you know, things of that nature. I think for us was figuring out the continuity of these like large sort of blue screen sequences. They're incredibly tricky. We had an array set up for background footage that worked sometimes and didn't work in other times. You know, it was the white old sequence. I don't know, it's just arbitrary name, I guess, but it was.
Do you have any of
hard.
those images you can bring up in a breakdown? Because to me, there's two things that were hard in this film. One, obviously scope, but sequence wise, the opening sequence where we have to see a young Sarah Connor, a young Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a young John Connor is probably one of the most difficult things we had to do. We had to tackle that with a plan early on. But to Jake's point, the things that you sometimes take for granted in films when you're shooting on a blue screen stage with your actors in a vehicle, that the vehicle is not moving. And in this case, we don't necessarily have LED panels. To pull those shots off could be equally as challenging as a sequence, because you don't know how it's going to be cut together. There's background issues, there's reflection issues, there's eyeglass issues. Jake's team had to handle a lot of that. When it's done right, you don't notice it at all, which is the goal. But we've all seen bad car comps on all types of shows. And I think it just shows how tricky those can be as well.
They're easy to overlook. And when they're done wrong, it could ruin the film for you. It could take you out of the film. And to do them right takes care and precision, which is why I have James Lee, my comp supervisor, who's phenomenal. I think he was doing 100 hours a week on the show, which is painful, which isn't right. I don't support that kind of excess working, but sometimes it's necessary.
He was definitely dedicated and a tremendous asset.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal artist. That work, I mean, it really does shine. You watch it and you don't even notice that it's a composite, you know. Any other questions?
Yeah. Rory, sorry, asks, could Jake elaborate on choosing the 2K monitors? I'm assuming that means why you chose the EIZOs 2K monitors versus
Absolutely,
4K.
Yeah. It's just personal preference, really. I like the scale of my icons, which I know you can change, but I like the fluidity of going between them. I like the size of them. You know, even when viewing 4K footage, you know, I've workarounds for it, so I can get, you know, I can still look at pixel for pixel. That said, you know, like I said, Eric doesn't, you know, he'd prefer to use the 319, which is a fantastic monitor. And then one of my other supervisors, Patrick Heinen, he uses dual, you know, 319s. Just personal preference, really. I mean, they're both fantastic monitors. They have the same color profile, same calibration. It's just a different form factor.
Okay. Tom asks, since each shot can take months to complete, how do you ensure that the story is being told in the vision of the director? And he goes on, as a creator, most hate to have their vision changed. So how does a VFX specialist adjust to these varying directors' visions?
Well, that's where the post-biz comes in. So as the editor and director are sitting together and cutting sequences together, you know, the director's working with the post-biz team saying, hey, in this shot, I need this in the background, and let's lose the blue screen, and can you have this thing flying in left to right? And then they get a version of that quickly, and it goes straight into the edit, and he goes, yeah, that's telling the story. So when the visual effects companies get that turned over to them, that's their guide. If something leaves camera, you know, on frame 30 from frame left, and then 60 it leaves frame right, then that's the timing essential. That's the guide, the blueprint for that shot for the visual effects company, and that's what we expect to get back in the edit, because they'll also do sound editing in editorial to put little sounds there. So again, an audience can view it and they buy it. So what the companies get is a blueprint that not only they follow, but then that's my guide for giving them correct input. If, you know, I'll see things in context cut in as I give them feedback to make sure things are working the way the director intended. And sometimes you'll get a company that gives us something that they'll give us something. What I always say, give us what you think is great, and or what the director asked for, and then if you have a better idea, give us that too, and we'll be happy to share it, because there's so many great artists out there that they'll see what you did and say, oh, it'd be better if you did this. We don't want to stop that. We love that. Happy accidents, great ideas, but we need to show the director what they asked for first. So sometimes they'll even say, look, that's awesome. I wish I'd have thought of that, but I really need what I gave them because it works in continuity. So
It's
that's
kind of
our guide.
partially why some of the VFX companies got in trouble financially a few years back, right? Kind of taking over, and continually editing and adding on to what was originally proposed and agreed to.
Yeah, visual effects is it
yes and no, but because sometimes, sorry, Jake, it's hard to fathom this, but the visual effects companies don't have like in their bid, we're going to show you 5 versions, and after 5 versions you have to pay more. So you show your 5 versions, the director says, still not what I want, try something else. You could get on to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 versions, and you're just burning money because you bid a certain amount of time. Because they don't bid that way, the goal is to keep the director happy, and sometimes, you don't, the director maybe doesn't know exactly what he wanted, or what he wanted didn't like, and now he wants something different, and that's all time. It's kind of like remodeling your house. When you say, I really like that bathroom vanity, and you put it in and you walk in, it's like, man, now that I see it there, you know what, I want a bigger one, and the guy comes in and rips it down. Well, guess what, that costs money and time. It's the same thing with visual effects shots. So being able to budget and plan and then help move things along is tricky, and keeping everyone happy because of the money involved. So companies go out of business because studios stop, or they turn over late, or they have too many revisions and they can't get the margins on the work, or they lose money on a job and have to buy a job because another company's got a better tax break. It's so complex. I love all the artists, and I wish that part of the business was much simpler.
Yeah, maybe artists wouldn't have to move around so much.
Exactly, because there's nothing like working with great artists wherever they are.
Yeah. Let's see. I have one more. If sometimes a shot takes up to 8 months, or shot or a scene takes up to 8 months to do the work on, what keeps the artist motivated during that long of a process for creating a shot? Working on something and then that one thing for so long.
Well, they have pride of ownership. They want to put out the best possible work, and sometimes it's not just one artist. I think Jake was breaking down all the different things that go into a shot, where someone's modeling it, someone's texturing it. So generally, by the time it gets into a finished shot stage where the compositor is putting together, sometimes it's the compositor that is doing the final finessing, and then he'll ask for a change in an element or so. But it's usually the team and their pride of ownership wanting to give you the best work possible, because their name's going to be on the screen and it's going to go in the movie. And as long as there's money to still pay for the artist working on the shot, the company's happy, then they want to give you great work. Nothing makes them happier than seeing amazing work.
Great. So pride of ownership. Love it.
That's a good point. And it's not, like Eric said, it's not one person who's on it for 8 months, because everything's compartmentalized for efficiency. It's people come on and off of a particular shot throughout its evolution.
I guess that leads me to a question I'm curious about. Are there specialists, like fire specialists and smoke specialists and hair specialists?
Absolutely.
And that's all they do?
On Eric's film, Benjamin Buttons, which his Oscar is right there for. Eric had an eye water guy, specialist for eye water.
Eye water guy.
He had an eye water. He had an eyebrow guy. He had a facial hair guy, not just a hair guy. I believe you had a facial hair. You're like an eyebrow guy, right? Or was it hair and eyebrows?
Well, it was a hair guy, because we were both writing a brand new hair system because one didn't exist when we went to look on the shelf at the time. And then, yeah, we end up having a couple people have to worry about the grooming aspect, how the eyebrow and the flow and the hair groomer. But then you have dynamics. How does the hair move when wind hits it? And its specialty comes in handy. And, for that film, to me, I tell the artist, if you're going to make a fully CG human, and it's got to be older Brad Pitt, it's almost overwhelming to an artist to think that that's what they have to tackle. But I just kept saying, nope, it's bite-sized chunks. All I want you to worry about is the eyebrows, and you're just going to worry about this. And everyone go, I can do that, and they can focus.
I can handle that.
And then when you put it all together, then they collectively they'll go, wow, they start, that's amazing, and you build off of that, and they feed off of each other, and they all wanted even better because they saw what he did, and that's how we made all that work.
I think we're at the end of our questions, and we're about 20 minutes over, so I guess we better wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm good.
Eric and Jake, thanks so much for taking the time today. This is very informative for me, as well as I believe our audience had quite a bit of good engagement there. So just thank you, and do want to mention that if for everyone that's left in the audience, if you're looking for accurate, consistent color in your work, if you're an artist and you want to make it look right and look that way all the time, think of an EIZO color edge monitor.
There you go.
And,
I'd like to also, can I pitch something real quick?
Yeah, please.
I have a pre-viz, post-viz app that I wrote. It's on, it's available on iPhone at the App Store. It's called VizLab, VISLAB. If you want to play around with your own pre-viz or post-viz animation, you can grab the app. It has some template animation on it. You could place it in your room and photograph it and sort of explore how to do some post-viz just right on your mobile device. Really simple. And then if you're a 3D artist, or if you're a conceptual artist, even a modeler, you can load your own 3D geometry and photograph it with the phone. However, I have to caveat this. It doesn't support iPhone 12 or the latest version of iPad yet. We're going to release a new version this week, which will support iPhone 12 and 2020 iPads.
Excellent.
Caveat that. Any
Awesome.
Kevin.
Love it.
VizLab, VISLAB.
Excellent.
Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Goodbye.
Right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Cheers. Bye.